The greatest misconception of people in the modern world is thinking that power is only about shouting loudly, constantly being on stage, and aggressively displaying wealth or intelligence. However, one of the cornerstones of the historiopsyche philosophy is that the most dangerous predator is the intellect that never roars, but rather presents itself as the prey. When we deeply examine Robert Greene's laws of power and Machiavellian strategy, an unshakable rule emerges: conceal your intentions, and to catch your target, appear dumber than them if necessary. The human ego, by nature, hungers to see itself as superior to others. The moment you make your rival, your enemy, or your business partner feel that you are smarter, more ambitious, or more dangerous than them, you trigger their defense mechanisms. They perceive you as a threat, filter their moves, and fortify their walls. But if you give them that fake sense of superiority they desperately want to hear, if you wear a fake mask of weakness, all the shields in their mind fall one by one. A person who feels safe is the easiest prey to devour. The moment they begin to underestimate you, they have actually moved the first pawn on the chessboard that prepares their own end. As Sun Tzu states in The Art of War, appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. But the pinnacle of dark psychology is ensuring that, despite your strength, your enemy sees you as completely helpless, harmless, and manipulable. In today's world, where the masses immediately jump forward to satisfy their egos over the slightest success, this strategy is the greatest weapon of leaders silently playing for the summit. A high-functioning Machiavellian mind can completely suppress its own ego for the sake of its grand vision. They tolerate people mocking them, underestimating them, or leaving them in the background, because they know that the footsteps of a man walking in the shadows can never be tracked. This is a labyrinth of mirrors. You give your rival the reflection they want to see. While they think they are controlling you, completely mesmerized by their own genius, you silently note every weakness, every open door, and every emotional outburst. Sitting in your inner citadel with absolute rationality while playing helplessness on the outside like a stage actor is the common trait of the greatest diplomats, kings, and stock speculators who altered the course of history. They chose not to be applauded on stage, but to hold the strings backstage. Because applause is the first stage of being placed on a target board. When you choose silence, invisibility, and fake weakness, no power in the world can predict when, from where, and with what force you will strike. Although this situation may seem like a humiliation for weak minds, it is the greatest source of pleasure for the true masters of power. As the tyrant of your own mind, watching the ignorance behind the arrogant smiles of others, and bringing down the entire castle with a single move when the time comes, is the highest level of strategic satisfaction attainable in this world. Therefore, if you want absolute power and control in this life, you must first learn to put your ego aside, become invisible, and drown people in their own arrogance. You will show your teeth only when you are about to bite. Until that moment, everyone will think you are a harmless sheep, right until they feel the wolf's claws on the back of their necks. If the first rule of acquiring power is concealing your intentions, the rule of transforming that power into absolute respect and dependence is strategic absence. The human mind tends to devalue anything it can access at any moment, anything that is constantly at hand and has clearly drawn boundaries. This is a universal psychological law. As a leader, an executive, or a business partner, if you make yourself constantly available, if you accept every invitation, raise your voice in every argument, and show up in every environment, you are pulverizing your own value with your own hands. Robert Greene's 16th law of power states exactly this: use absence to increase respect and honor. What is plentiful in the world is cheap, while what is scarce is always priceless. But the truly dark and fascinating point here is the immense psychological storm you will create in the other party with your absence. Human nature hates a vacuum. When there is uncertainty or an unexplained silence, the human brain begins to fill this void with its greatest fears, paranoias, and scenarios. When you strategically pull back, the people around you start wondering like crazy what you are thinking, what you are planning, and why you are silent. This curiosity quickly gives way to deep anxiety, and then to absolute surrender. Strategic isolation and absence are the most refined ways to manipulate the people in front of you. A man who talks constantly only increases his chances of making a mistake. However, a mind that suddenly vanishes at the right time and in the right place, or envelops itself in absolute silence, creates a massive power vacuum around it. People reach a point where they will beg you to break that silence, to give them a sign, or just to make your presence felt. This tactic applies not only in politics but in every aspect of life, from modern B2B negotiations to interpersonal relationships. The man who knows how to walk away from the table at the right time is the most powerful man at the table. because that departure gives the other side the clearest and most ruthless message: I do not need your rules, your approval, or your presence. History writes of kings swinging swords and shouting their names in the squares, but the ones holding the strings of those kings are always the shadow men in the darkest corner of the palace, acting as if they are nothing at all. Consider Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, the most dangerous mind of 19th century Europe. He survived the French Revolution, became Napoleon's most trusted minister, then stabbed Napoleon in the back and put the Bourbon kings on the throne. And whenever a regime collapsed, he always sat at the very head of the table, with his hands clean. Do you know what his secret was? In those bloody arenas where everyone shouted with ambition to destroy each other, Talleyrand always played the weakest, most unassuming, and most harmless man. Napoleon underestimated him, calling him shit in a silk stocking. Talleyrand merely smiled and bowed, because he knew that while the emperor's arrogance blinded his own eyes, his own fake weakness granted him absolute invisibility. And when the time came, that harmless diplomat surrounded all of Napoleon's armies from behind with a single letter. As the emperor was sent into exile, Talleyrand was sipping his wine in his new palace. Now let's bring this dark strategy into today's massive business world, into the cold glass rooms of those skyscrapers. Two giant tech companies sit at the table for a billion-dollar merger. The CEO of one side is ambitious. He talks constantly, recounts his successes, and tries to crush the table with the sheer size of his company. The other CEO on the opposite side, quiet, bespectacled, and appearing incredibly modest, only takes notes, nods in agreement, and creates the impression that he is the weakest link at the table. Intoxicated by victory, the ambitious CEO lowers his defense shields, unwittingly revealing the vulnerabilities in the company's internal operations and future risks. At the end of the meeting, that harmless-looking CEO abruptly cuts off all communication without any explanation and envelops himself in a strategic absence. Days pass, phone calls are not returned, emails remain unanswered. Panic begins in the mind of that arrogant and ambitious CEO. What did I do wrong? What flaw did he notice? Or are they making a deal with another firm? Paranoia pulverizes that great ambition overnight. A week later, the quiet CEO returns to the table with a single offer, but this time, the price has been cut in half. The ambitious one has self-destructed in that created psychological void and sits at the table completely brought to his knees. Welcome to Historipsyche. Today, we will not tell you about those naive and ambitious people who think they can conquer the world with noise, but about the absolute, ruthless power brought by silence, fake weakness, and strategic absence. Lean back, throw your ego in the trash where it belongs, and learn how to rule the world like an invisible ghost. Because true predators do not approach by looking their prey in the eye, they wait in the blind spot where the prey thinks it has already passed them by.